Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're finally going to be talking about the newest album from PUP called Morbid Stuff. You know, it's kind of funny. I was talking with a fellow Canadian music writer when I was catching a couple punk bands performing in downtown Toronto, I want to say a couple months ago, and mostly making fun of the label guys who are clearly too cool for any of this, and yet aren't nearly as inconspicuous as they think they are, and I was wondering why the hell they were even there. I mean, punk can move units in the festival circuit, but that scene is nowhere close to the market share and mainstream dominance it was even a decade ago. But then she pointed out something rather obvious. They have to be there. Even if the majority of these bar bands would turn out to be nothing, or they'd flame out, or they'd become the underground lifers for which music becomes a hobby, every so often you would get an act like Fucked Up, or Japan Droids, or PUP, and whatever's left of the larger rock, or punk, or indie labels would need to find them and make money off them somehow. And it was that conversation that really leapt to mind when I went through PUP's back catalog yet again for this review. Cause man, I've heard a lot of pop-punk bar acts in Canada that fit pretty close to what PUP is delivering here. The huge abrasive riffs, the shouted vocals, far better guitar, bass, and drum work that you would not expect from the old pop punk set in the 2000s, thanks to a lingering post-hardcore influence, and then a lot of lyrics ripping sheets from the third wave of emo. Really, the bands that blow up with this sound right now, they're the ones that can actually write sticky songs and hooks, and that is what PUP has. Now, I'll freely admit not quite loving what they brought to the table before. I've long felt the band has missed some of the tightness in their first two projects, even if the hooks were there, especially on their debut, which I think I like a little bit more than The Dream Is Over. But given how much critical acclaim had fallen on their third album, Morbid Stuff, which many have suggested was their most refined and yet paradoxically their most ruckus and angry project to date, I really had to make some time to finally check this out. So, okay, what do we get from Morbid Stuff? Well, honestly, it's a PUP album, folks. And while I certainly see the critical acclaim for this band in terms of expanding and yet tightening their sound down to what's probably the most frenetic and effective, I am also, I think I'm at the point where I will support and appreciate this band. I just wouldn't really call them a personal favorite just yet. Mostly because a lot of my quibbles with this album, I really could have made against most of their last two projects. Again, this is still really damn good. PUP is carving out a niche in punk and marrying some of their hardcore and pop punk tendencies with a splash of emo and post-hardcore, and Morbid Stuff holds together a little bit more effectively than, say, The Dream Is Over, but I'm not quite sure I'm fully on the bandwagon calling them great just yet, even if they are really, really damn close. And yes, all this comes with the acknowledgement that is right out of the gate that I can easily see all the ingredients to a really great pop album that can hit for me. Mostly because the sound they're creating right now is pretty damn compelling. The huge melodic hooks that are anchored in a lot of the guitars and the aggressive bass lines, some of the overblown drum work that's doing a fair bit more than I think they've been given credit, and especially the vocals led by Stefan Babcock's howl and his full band that's shouting along behind him. It's got more of a disheveled bar band vibe, and again, I mean that as a compliment, especially given the intentionally rough-edged swagger the band has cultivated, especially with all the distortion that they leave in. In Toronto, in a city full of preening posers, PUP, they're content just to get drunk and fight with a desperate edge that excuses how the feedback might spill over, how it sounds a little deceptively sloppy, or how the more hardcore songs seem to collapse in upon themselves into their own grooves. And yes, this is where I'm going to plug in my consistent criticism of this band. If the hooks are better than ever, and they remain pretty good songwriters, more on this in a bit, would it kill you guys to push the vocals a little closer to the front of the mix, especially if you're trying to be more anthemic than ever before? It just seems that that's the last step to truly put them over the top, and I'm not convinced it would compromise a lot of their established tones, especially if the songwriting is taking more turns for the introspective. Hell, look at Idols, they pulled this off on their last album. Now, it's also not to say this tone is entirely unique to PUP either. More than a few glances are being made at Jeff Rosenstock, and especially when you dig into the sound and the lyrical ideas, PUP isn't quite aiming as high as he is, but on some level that kind of makes sense. Doubling down on that more of a pop focus on a compositional level, it lets them get the abundance of hooks on songs like the title track, or Kids, or Bare Hands, or Bloody Mary Kate and Ashley, while still allowing room for the more expansive, multi-part midlife crisis on Scorpion Hill, or the pummeling, damn near nu metal or metalcore crunch on full-blown Meltdown. Meltdown. Now, I will say my one complaint here is that I don't think the album ends particularly strongly with City, a melancholic but sluggy, bassy slowdown that is playing to more of an emotive side that I'm not quite certain Babcock as a frontman can pull off, especially given how far back the vocals are positioned. You kind of need intimacy in your pickups in order to pull off that moment, and PUP didn't really foster that vibe. Well, I say that, but they're not fostering the vibe in that way, because then when we get to the lyrics and the opening track having some note-perfect references to parts of the greater Toronto area, and you realize that the band isn't about to abandon the very specific scope that gives their worth both some universality and clear focus. Because on the surface, the broader arc of this project might seem to be a breakup album, but PUP is a lot more interested conceptually in our fascination with negative or self-destructive emotions, and they don't really shy away from including themselves in that conversation. It's really well framed there. And of course, while some of the individual song topics or moments that might feel a little bit rote if you listen to a lot of emo in this lane, what places Morbid Stuff in a different tier and probably closer to the current third wave of emo is, again, the framing. Because they know these moments are self-destructive and they're only rooted in the best of intentions if they're lying to themselves, but the emotionality is still there and is still somewhat valid regardless of its rampant immaturity, because that might have a place too. And the conflicted dichotomy gives a lot of this album its power. Look at the post-breakup awkwardness on See You at Your Funeral, confronting an old ex while he's going through the rituals of adulthood and trying to get his life together, and he tries to be civil even as some of the questions will reopen old wounds for him, but the catharsis probably would come through most just screaming in her face. And the next song, Scorpion Hill, goes further, because when you're laid off and you're debt-ridden and you're desperate, you might find some sick solace in some pretty dark thoughts until your partner finds your gun in your child's room and you're forced to face reality and responsibility. And that's why Full-Blown Meltdown makes so much sense on this album regardless. The active deconstruction where he highlights the music industry and the allure that's built off of self-destruction, but he's also discovering that not only does it have some limited appeal in real life, see the hook at Free at Last, but also in art, it gets tedious, increasingly artificial. So where the hell do you even go from here? Now this is actually a similar arc that Foxing explored in their Transcendent project last year, Near My God, and they actually took the next steps to drill deeper into the root causes that PUP doesn't quite get to, but on some level that kind of makes sense, because this project is nowhere near as detached, and this emotional battle is something that doesn't really have a clean or logical resolution, if there even is one, and no matter how much of closure that he desperately wants here. It's one reason that even if I don't really like the downbeat ending on City, the whole cloying feeling of helplessness that he can't quite get over the situation makes a lot of sense. It does fit with the album. So yeah, it's a pretty great PUP album. Probably their most cohesive and well-structured to date, with a ton of riotous hooks and well-thought-out writing. I just wish I was convinced it completely stuck the landing in the end. And I still think a couple production tweaks would put these guys into the stratosphere. But yeah, I'm gonna err on the side of positive here. I'm still gonna give this an extremely light 8 out of 10, and absolutely recommendation if you haven't heard them already. You probably have if you're in the scene, but again, it's still worth going back to revisit. And for a band that can feel this local and yet deliver this big, I gotta provide a ton of respect. So even if it is just some Morbid Stuff, absolutely worth hearing. Check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I know I'm late to the punch with this, but seriously, it's a great album. You want to buy or stream, links down there below. And I got the poll up there. I'm curious for you guys basically to validate my opinion or tell me how wrong I am. Looking forward to it. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And just a friendly reminder, I keep saying this, but if you're looking for where Billboard Breakdown is, it's on the new channel. I got a link to that channel in the card right here. Please go check it out, even if the episode's kind of shoddy because the songs last time were pretty crap. But hey, happy to have you guys back over there. And I'm also looking to start uploading some of my older episodes just so I fully flesh out that whole season there, and we'll see where that goes. But hey, till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.